Every day, I meet all kinds of clients at Dreamweaver's Wedding Solutions. My downtown Seattle establishment, it can be a chaotic whirlwind at times. Everyone wants their big day to be picture perfect, but nobody seems to have the time or patience to make it happen. Still, there are undeniable perks. My job, in essence, is to craft moments of profound joy and sometimes profound sorrow. One of the best parts, the extensive network of contacts I've built throughout the industry. That's incredibly useful. Take, for instance, the time I managed to cut my best friend Lily's wedding costs in half, thanks to my connections. Lily and I go way back. From the days I was broke and barely scraping by, we've been inseparable. I could always count on her to be my ally when I was homeless and had nowhere else to go. She opened her arms and offered me shelter. She's a kind of friend who's there to reassure you that you're not alone when you're feeling low. Consequently, I felt nothing but pure joy for her when I heard the news that she was getting married. I knew I had to do something extraordinary to show my gratitude for everything she'd done for me. My job allows me to maintain relationships with people from all walks of life, top-tier florists, visionary photographers, gourmet caterers, you name it. I've also become somewhat well-known, which allows me to negotiate steep discounts for my clients. It was my intention to go all out for Lily. I knew how much she and her fiancé had been saving for this wedding. It was her big day. I chose to call in all my favors. From the venue manager I rescued last year during a crisis to the photographer, who still owes me for that one time I saved him from a lawsuit. I've kept everyone in the loop. Finally helping someone who truly needed it felt incredibly good. I significantly reduced Lily's cost. Here we're talking about slashing a $22,000 wedding to approximately $6,000. Strange, isn't it? It isn't impossible, though, if you have the right connections and have been around for a while. I set it all up for her at a beautiful garden location at Chateau Saint. With Michelle, you usually have to plan ahead at least a year. We got it at a rock-bottom price because I know the owner directly. Since I've given the caterer a ton of business over the years, he gave her a ridiculous discount on their famed Northwest salmon dishes, which normally cost a fortune at first glance. It may seem like I was merely going about my work, and to some extent I was, but there was something so fulfilling about the situation. I could tell it meant a lot to her, and chances like these don't come along very often for best friends. It was the most incredible sensation ever to witness Lily's happiness. She is the type of person who always prioritizes the needs of others. When I presented her the final figures, she started to cry, and I knew I had succeeded. I had no idea that this simple gesture of friendship would force the ghosts of my past to resurface. Lily was incredibly appreciative, and being the generous soul that she is, she proudly shared on Instagram how much money I had saved her and how fortunate she felt to have me as a friend. This was just a friendly post from a buddy, so I didn't give it much thought. Strangely, I might have requested her not to tag me if I had anticipated the consequences. You see, I'm not very good at communicating with my loved ones. For a long time, I didn't. I came out to them when I was 17, and they kicked me out. After that, our relationship basically came to a halt. They couldn't care less about my safety or where I was going. Thankfully, my Aunt Grace took me in until I could be on my own. However, I maintained my distance. I felt they didn't have a right to be in my life now that I was succeeding on my own. Since they didn't help me out when I was down, however, they found themselves with much to say the moment they laid eyes on Lily's message. The first strange thing that happened was that my mom, Sarah, called, which was almost unheard of. As soon as I spoke, she dove headfirst into it. Just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Please tell me why you were not involved in your sister's wedding. I was taken aback. Why? Because I had no idea my sister was even engaged, much less making ceremony preparations. My mother began narrating the story of my sister Eleanor's displeasure that I had aided a friend, rather than my own relatives. It was as if they had simply resolved to disregard my existence for the past many years. Trying not to lose my composure was really challenging. It was the height of hypocrisy. They expect me to drop everything and pitch in like it never happened. After they expelled me as a teenager and left me to my own devices, I was very forthright with my parents about my intention not to apologize for lending Lily a hand. I told her she was deserving of it because she has been my rock through good times and bad. That was taken the wrong way by my mom. She became quite angry and began lecturing me about how my sister would appreciate it if I helped out, among other things. I informed her it wasn't going to happen and ended the call because I was sick of continuing the conversation. I thought that would be the final chapter. Unfortunately, I was incorrect. The following day, I began to receive messages from long-lost relatives who were behaving as if I were the worst person in the world because I had put my sister last. The situation was just unbelievable. At that moment, it seemed like everyone was attempting to place the blame on me by telling me how much I had changed and how I should stop dwelling on the past. I mean, seriously, I was trying to figure out where I was going to get my next meal while I was homeless and staying on couches. Where were these people? While it's one thing for them to send texts and phone calls, my sister really went overboard. She made an effort to contact me often by leaving lengthy voicemails, in which she accused me of prioritizing strangers before family. She went so far as to involve my dad, Robert, who has always failed to support me in it. I was too exhausted to deal with the turmoil. So I just ignored most of the calls. This, though, I knew, was just the beginning. Things are never that easy for my family. After seeing some of the comments my sister made on her post, Lily decided to give me a call to see how things were going. I assured her she shouldn't be concerned that she had inadvertently caused difficulty for me. She was completely innocent. It was entirely their choice if my relatives chose to create a fuss over this for some reason. They felt the need to force me to pay for my sister's wedding, but I wasn't about to give in to their demands. The headache was still building, though. My family was known to not back down from a fight, so I knew this was only the beginning. I reasoned that my mom, sister, and a slew of other relatives would calm down after bombarding my phone with calls and texts. I was hoping they'd see through their own foolishness and move on. Yeah, that was just my own wishful thinking. That just isn't how my family operates. Until they achieve their goal, they will not budge. 2 days down the road, I'm still rocking it at work. I was in the midst of confirming that the florist had all the necessary arrangements for this outdoor wedding at Green Lake Park when my boss, Evelyn, called. I sensed something was wrong when she said she needed to see me in her office ASAP, even though she's normally fairly chill. When I arrived, she appeared very grave. According to her, the company was contacted by someone posing as a member of my family. It was readily identifiable to me. Who else might it be? My sister Eleanor apparently wasn't just attempting to chat when she called. According to what she told my manager, it was unfair that I took advantage of my connections to secure a discount for a friend rather than a family member. According to her, it was an act of partiality on my part, and I was taking advantage of the firm. Do you think that's true? Evelyn asked. She went to great lengths to convince my supervisor that I should assist her with her wedding rather than Lily's. The good news is that my boss was not one to believe any of it. She patiently listened to my sister's ramblings, then kindly informed her that it is against company policy to meddle in workers' personal relationships. After that, she ended the call. Nonetheless, my supervisor was concerned for my well-being and threatened to contact human resources if my relatives attempted anything untoward. It made me feel better knowing my boss was on my side, but it also made me feel ashamed that my sister had the gall to do something so bold. Getting angry with me on the phone is one thing, but bringing up my job in the middle of it? That is truly unprecedented. I was in a rage when I left my boss's office. Hey, who does that? Anyway, who the F *** thinks it's acceptable to try to fire someone for no good reason other than that they were wrong? My thoughts were racing the entire time I attempted to concentrate on my task. Even after taking a deep breath, even though I was aware that my sister was spoiled, this hit close to home. Just because I refused to give in to her demands didn't mean she was going to stop trying to destroy all I had worked so hard to create. However, I was completely unprepared for what lay ahead, even if I found this unpleasant. I got home later that night to find that my inbox had been flooded with texts from long-lost relatives and acquaintances from high school. It had been years since we last had any communication. Guess what? My sister had been bashing me for being selfish and not helping out the family on Facebook, and everyone was spreading her posts. I had abandoned the concept of blood, she wrote, and she couldn't believe her own sister would betray her in such a way, and the public devoured it. Hey there, girl. Family is family. I got messages from all sorts of people saying that your sister is depending on you at the moment. Therefore, you should definitely put things right. What gives with your behavior? It was quite frustrating. They were completely unaware of what transpired. As a teenager, my family abandoned me. Although they were unaware of this, they had no idea that my sister had it made for her while I scrimped and saved every night. But now that things are looking up and I have a good job, I'm the villain because I refused to do favors for everyone. I fought the need to pay attention, but it was becoming unbearable. Both my inbox and phone were overflowing with messages. The stress of keeping up with all my social media accounts last night drove me to log off all of them. The last thing I wanted to do was deal with their turmoil. I needed a break. However, the following day, matters deteriorated much further. A coworker texted me to let me know that my mom and sister had turned up at the office while I was at work again, getting ready for another wedding. Until I saw the video, I assumed they were kidding, that they were clamoring to talk with me from the front desk. What should I do? I have no idea. I considered ducking into the back and acting as if nothing was wrong, but I realized it would only make matters worse, so I made my way to the foyer, where my sister began ranting at me, unable to believe I was betraying my own family. There she was, with my mom standing by her side, defending her and claiming that she never taught me to be cold-hearted in my office. It felt like an intervention had just taken place. Despite my best efforts, the entire ordeal was mortifying. I could see my supervisor observing from her office as people walked by, their gaze fixed on us. I politely requested that my mom and sister leave because this was not the appropriate location for our discussion. My sister, however, persisted in insisting that I owed her an apology and that, failing that, my family status would be terminated. I had had enough by that moment. I made it clear that I would not be participating in her wedding or jeopardizing my career. For their impromptu decision to reintegrate me into their lives, I suggested that they could have exhibited their concern for family rather than evicting me when I was a teenager. For a moment, that silenced them. My sister, however, resorted to playing the victim card by claiming, "I'm attempting to mend a relationship, and this is how you compensate me." What a pitiful sight. I warned her that this was not the way to heal our relationship if she meant it. Honestly, though, I couldn't care less about it then. That was it. I pivoted and proceeded to go, leaving them stranded. They were escorted out by security, and I could sense that the whole workplace was staring at me. I felt ashamed. I returned to my workstation after they departed and attempted, in vain, to concentrate on my job. The only thing that kept running through my head was how my own relatives had attempted to interfere with my work when they weren't satisfied. Along with my anger, I felt hurt. The more I thought about the talk, the more irritated I became. The individuals who were supposed to be my family couldn't care less about my hard work and accomplishments. My supervisor summoned me back to her office as soon as my shift ended. She expressed her remorse for the incident and promised that it would not impact my position. But she also emphasized the importance of separating my professional and personal lives. I acknowledged her support and expressed my gratitude for it. Something did occur to me, though, as I was leaving her office. The fate of my loved ones depended on my decision. After all, if they were prepared to perform the stunt now, what else could they possibly do if I refused to give in after that disastrous event at work? I was hoping things would settle down. They had already exhausted all possible means of pressurizing me into covering the costs of my sister's wedding. I suppose I failed to account for their level of resolve, though. It turns out they still have more misery in store for me. A note arrived in my inbox a few days later from a long-lost friend. A screen capture of my sister's most recent social media post was shared to me by her in her lengthy tirade. My sister had included childhood photos of both of us, and she made up this dramatic tale about how I was betraying my loved ones and spoiling her big day. She went so far as to say that she had contacted my manager since she was stuck with me and couldn't trust me to do the right thing. It was as if she was attempting to cast me as a victim while playing the victim card herself. The most frustrating aspect was reading through all of the responses to her post. Uninformed individuals were siding with her, insulting me profanely, and expressing their disgust that I would not defend my sister. The gall was unbelievable to me. These folks had absolutely no idea what had transpired. My family had expelled me when I was a teenager, and my sister hadn't contacted me for years until she had a need. But they were completely unaware of this. Seeing those stuff did hurt me, even if I have a relatively thick skin. The treatment you receive from loved ones is bad enough when complete strangers, who are in the dark about the situation, add insult to injury. It becomes unbearable. Then, after working for approximately a week, I get home to see this parcel waiting for me at the door. Since I wasn't anticipating anything, I found it strange that it bore my name. Thus, I took it out. An invitation to my sister's wedding was contained herein. It wasn't, however, your average invitation. The reverse side bore a message that she had penned in large, furious font. It was written with the intention that you would eventually see the gravity of your actions. My wedding has been spoiled by you, yet there is hope for a recovery. Everyone will see through your fate if you don't take a stand, and I can't wait. The manipulation had reached unprecedented levels, and I was prepared to take decisive action. I stared at it, unable to comprehend how she could feel so entitled. Now she's leaving me guilt-trip texts after she blasted me on social media and showed up at my job. My sister was already accustomed to having her way, but this took it to a whole new level. Every day, the pressure mounted, and I couldn't help but feel like she was attempting to manipulate me into giving in. I had had enough by this time that my mom and sister were the ones I chose to block on all platforms. Messages, phone calls, social media, text messages, I mean everything. I merely desired a moment of tranquility. I reasoned that if they were unable to contact me, they would just give up trying and leave me alone whenever my family is involved. Though, things are never that cut and white. A few days down the road, while going about my usual workday, my phone decides to go off again. This time, it's my sister's co-workers letting me know that they've read yet another post. My co-worker provided me a screenshot even though I didn't have to look at it to see that it was more of her drama. No, this one was really awful. She had written on social media about how she was devastated, that she couldn't afford the Kleinfeld wedding dress of her dreams, and how her sister had ignored her pleas for assistance. Even though she was in a position to provide it, she elaborated by saying that my egotism had caused her to have to cut back on the quality of her wedding, and the commenters couldn't get enough of it. It was as if everyone had completely lost touch with reality and was assuming they knew everything from a single post about how social media operated. It had become more difficult to disregard at this stage. People I didn't know were sending me angry messages, and my inbox was getting full. They threatened me and made derogatory comments about my family, which I took as an insult. The situation was truly becoming unbearable. The cherry on top was when my mom called me from an unblocked number. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but I decided to answer in the hopes that maybe she was finally prepared to have a rational conversation. She wasn't. To spoil it, she began screaming as soon as I picked up the phone. I was the one causing strife in the family, and she let out a tirade about her disappointment in me. She simply ignored my attempts to explain that they were the ones who had kicked me out, and ignored me for years. Per her, that happened a very long time ago. You should mature and find a new path. That was it. I threatened to sue her and my sister unless they would stop bothering me. She should know that I threatened to obtain a restraining order if she persisted in bothering me. And I meant it, attempting to shift gears and appear more sensible. She grew silent after that. She finally got her point across. Why don't you bail her at once? This is a wedding of your sister. Perhaps this is our chance for a new beginning. That made me laugh out loud. A new beginning. Where was this new beginning when I was 17 years old? I asked. It was nowhere to be found when I was fighting for survival in community college. She obviously couldn't respond to that. On the contrary, she broke down in tears as she explained how much my sister was suffering, and how I should be the one to alleviate her pain. That was my last string. Things were going to get far worse, but I couldn't take it any longer as she resorted to guilt-tripping. I really didn't think things could go worse. Oh, was I mistaken? My relatives persisted despite my blocking them on all platforms and even threatening legal action. If anything, it prompted them to step up their game. It's as if their determination to guilt me into paying for my sister's wedding grew stronger. The more I resisted, it was therefore a few days after my previous chat with Mom that I was making my way home from the office. Something was obviously wrong the moment I arrived at my building. Standing outside was a gang of people, some of whom appeared to be recognized faces. Seeing my sister Eleanor standing in the center of the group, carrying a large placard that bore my name, changed my perception from thinking they were just random folks or neighbors to someone far more serious. It seemed like her friends were, cousins were all around her, and they were staring at me as if I were the enemy. Not believing what I was witnessing, I froze for an instant. A protest being staged by my own sister outside my flat. That was an unusual one. How could you desert your own family? Was the bold message on her enormous sign? It seemed straight out of a low-budget Hollywood film. As she screamed at passers-by, she detailed how her egotistical sister had refused to chip in toward the cost of her wedding, and how she was now living large, with no intention of returning any of her inheritance to her family. My stomach was in knots. Attempting to persuade me in private was one thing, but sending a posse to my house? That was unacceptable. I attempted to discreetly pass them by, but my sister was not going to stand for it. She and her companions dashed up to me. She lost her composure and began to scream at me, demanding an opportunity to mend our relationship and accusing me of disregarding her pleas for assistance. It made no sense at all. I warned her that she was trespassing and that she should vacate the property, but she refused to budge and insisted that, being a public thoroughfare, she was well within her rights to be there. Her pals seemed intent on catching me in the act. As they were constantly photographing me on their phones, the neighbors' gazes were fixed on me. As it all came crashing down, there were a few spectators. In my most collected voice, I threatened to contact the authorities if my sister persisted in her refusal to leave. So, as not to cause any more trouble, she began to weep. True dramatic acting, covering her face with her hands while she sobs. She demanded to know how someone could treat their own sister that badly. I only desired to rectify the situation. Angrier than I have ever been before. She had no business making a big deal out of her arrival at my residence, I reminded her. I informed her that I would not be swayed into covering the cost of her wedding, only because she was acting for the sake of publicity. Unfortunately, she chose to disregard my words and continued telling her sad story in an attempt to cast me as the antagonist. Some of her pals were even saying, "Yeah, help your sister out." As they continued to record, "I can't stand how rude you are." I felt like a group of complete strangers who didn't know me were ganging up on me. I stepped inside when I had had enough, but the chanting and shouting continued outside. Upon informing the building management of the situation, I was informed that he would contact the authorities in the event that they persisted in remaining. The cops arrived after almost 20 minutes of this insanity. If my sister and her companions did not vacate the area immediately, they would be subject to accusations of public disturbance. She pretended to be treated unfairly the entire time, weeping uncontrollably. The police weren't believing her story that I was the one pestering her since I refused to assist her. She was given the ultimatum, either leave or they would arrest her. It was strange, but I felt both relieved and furious when she eventually departed. It was embarrassing, but it was good to see the police put an end to her antics. I was worried that people would talk about the commotion my sister had caused outside my house. I settled on a course of action that night. To get a restraining order, I went to a lawyer. From the harassment to the workplace ambush and the demonstration, I recorded it all. Being a victim to them was enough for me. I had every right to defend myself, the attorney told me, because what they were doing was harassment. Within 7 days, the court had upheld the restraining order. Nothing out of the ordinary happened at my sister's wedding. From what I've gathered, it was a modest ceremony, I guess, when you can't get folks to pay for your fantasy wedding. You have to make do with what you have. It was a Pike Place market. Months later, that I finally saw my Aunt Grace. My folks, she informed me, had been worried about me and wanted to know if I had finally snapped out of it. To put it simply, I told her I had never felt so calm and simply smiled, showing a toxic family member that their manipulative tactics are no longer effective. Can sometimes be the best course of action. Dreamweaver's Wedding Solutions is still my job. I still lend a hand to friends when I can, and I still don't regret my decision. Because genuine family members won't attempt to ruin your life just because you refuse to give in to their demands, and now I am permanently unencumbered by their drama.